Charles Cullen, the good nurse. In the early 2000s, patients began dying unexpectedly in hospitals in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. There was no clear pattern, nor was there an obvious cause, just a quiet, growing number of deaths, all connected by one thing: a nurse named Charles Cullen. There's a particular kind of horror in trusting someone completely, not the monster under the bed, but the person holding your hand in a hospital room at 3 in the morning, checking your IV, telling you everything is going to be fine. Cullen graduated from nursing school in 1986. 2 years later, he killed his first patient. What followed was a 16-year nursing career spanning 10 hospitals and nursing homes across New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and a body count that may never be fully known. He confessed to 29 murders, claimed he may have killed as many as 40. Some estimates put the true number closer to 400. 400 people! His method was almost impossibly simple. He injected lethal doses of medication directly into IV fluid bags, primarily digoxin, insulin, and lidocaine. He would volunteer for overnight shifts when supervision was minimal. When suspicion mounted, he didn't run. He simply applied for a job at the next hospital and got it. One former supervisor's notes on Cullen read, "Would not consider rehire medication issue." Hospitals were happy to keep his activities quiet if he would simply resign. Some actively avoided investigators. The system didn't just fail to stop him, it helped him keep moving. He called himself an angel of mercy. He said he killed to end suffering. But not all of his victims were terminal. Some had been expected to recover. His own nurse colleague described many of them as people on the mend. The victims included a judge, a priest, a 21-year-old man whose mother told the court, "Instead of giving him presents, I get to put flowers on his grave." What finally stopped him wasn't the hospitals. It was a nurse named Amy Lovren, a single mother with a heart condition who worked alongside Cullen at Somerset Medical Center. When the police approached her, she was afraid. But instead of turning away, she wore a wire and gathered the evidence that brought him down. In 2006, Cullen was sentenced to 18 consecutive life sentences. His earliest possible parole date is June 2388. In 2022, Netflix released The Good Nurse, starring Eddie Redmayne as Cullen and Jessica Chastain as Amy Lovren. It is one of the most chilling things Netflix has put out, not because of gore or jump scares, but because of how ordinary Cullen appears, how likable and easy to trust. A companion documentary capturing the killer nurse was released the same year, featuring interviews with Cullen himself, his co-workers, and the detectives who caught him. Cullen also happens to have influenced multiple episodes of Criminal Minds, where characters described as angel of death type killers share direct parallels with his profile, moving between locations, killing through overdose, and being identified through discrepancies in medication records. But here's what makes Cullen different from almost everyone else on this list. He wasn't hiding behind a mask. He wasn't performing charm or constructing a persona. By most accounts, he was genuinely kind. The co-workers who trusted him weren't wrong to trust him, at least, not in the ways they knew him. In his mind, he probably thought he was doing his victims a favor. The good nurse persona was real too. John Wayne Gacy, Psycho, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Silence of the Lambs. On the 16th of November, 1957, a hardware store owner disappears without a trace in Plainfield, Wisconsin. Police follow the last known lead to a quiet farmhouse on the edge of town. Inside, they don't just find a body, they find a nightmare. Furniture made from human bones, skulls turned into household items, a vest made from a female body, torso complete with breasts. The man living there? Ed Gein. Ed Gein gave horror movies something that would last. He gave them a blueprint. Ed Gein was a quiet, soft-spoken farmer from Plainfield, Wisconsin. He helped neighbors. He babysat children. By all accounts, he was considered one of the most dependable babysitters in town. What nobody knew was what he kept at home. Gein had been digging up bodies from local cemeteries and using them to create what investigators could only describe as a shrine. He confessed to 2 murders, but the collection suggested the horror went far deeper. Psychologists pointed to his deeply controlling, fanatically religious mother as his motivation, a woman who preached that all women except herself were instruments of the devil. When she died, Gein was lost. And then he became something else entirely. Ed Gein's crimes inspired 3 of the most influential horror films ever made: Psycho in 1960, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974, and The Silence of the Lambs in 1991. Alfred Hitchcock drew on Gein's twisted obsession with his overbearing mother to craft Norman Bates, a seemingly mild-mannered man harboring a terrifying monster within, just as Gein's warped devotion to his late mother drove him to madness. Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre was more direct. A killer who wears the skin of his victims, lives in an isolated rural home, and surrounds himself with furniture made from human remains. And then there's Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. According to FBI profiler John Douglas, Buffalo Bill's desire to kidnap, kill, and skin female victims to create a woman suit was drawn directly from what writer Thomas Harris knew about Gein. One man, 3 of cinema's most iconic monsters. Dennis Rader, Clove Hitch Killer. On the 15th of January 1974, a family of 4 was found murdered inside their home at 803 Edgemoor Street in Wichita. There was no sign of forced entry, no clear suspect, just a message sent later to the police. 3 letters, BTK, bind, torture, kill. The man behind it? Dennis Rader. Of all the killers on this list, Rader may be the most quietly terrifying. Not because his crimes were the most numerous, not because his methods were the most extreme, but because of where he hid, in plain sight. Dennis Rader was a married father of 2, a Cub Scout leader, the president of his church council at Christ Lutheran Church in Wichita, Kansas, a compliance officer who issued citations to residents for code violations. Between 1974 and 1991, Rader murdered 10 people in the Wichita area. He planned his murders carefully, sometimes staking out victims for weeks in advance. He sent taunting letters to police and media, describing his crimes in elaborate detail, signing them with his self-appointed name. Then he stopped. For over a decade, BTK went quiet, and the family man went to church. However, in 2004, bored by the lack of coverage of his case, he began sending letters again. He asked police whether a floppy disk could be traced. They told him no, but it could. DNA tests showed a genetic match that led investigators to Rader. He was arrested in February 2005, outside his Park City home. Officers asked if he knew why he was being taken in. He replied, "Oh, I have suspicions why." Stephen King has said his novella A Good Marriage was directly inspired by BTK, specifically by the central question of what it would mean to discover, after decades of marriage, that your spouse was a serial killer. Thomas Harris has said that Francis Dollarhide in Red Dragon was partially based on the then unidentified BTK killer, the character who sends taunting letters, who wants to be known, even as he hides. The 2018 film The Clove Hitch Killer drew its central idea directly from Rader, a seemingly perfect family man whose teenage son slowly realizes who his father really is. Rader is currently serving 10 consecutive life sentences. He is 80 years old and still alive. The church he led, the family he built, the reputation he cultivated, all of it was real. All of it coexisted for 3 decades with everything else he was. That's what makes BTK different from the others on this list. Gacy performed as a clown. Gein lived in isolation. Dahmer barely left his apartment. Bundy relied on strangers. Rader was integrated, trusted by everyone around him. He didn't hide in the dark. He was a devoted Christian. John Wayne Gacy, American Horror Story It. In December 1978, police investigating the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Peast step into a quiet suburban home in Norwood Park, Chicago, after neighbors complain about a strange smell. At first, it's dismissed, mold, rats, or perhaps plumbing. But as officers dig beneath the house, they uncover something far worse. Bodies. Dozens of them. This wasn't just a crime scene. It was a graveyard. The man responsible? John Wayne Gacy. He made kids laugh, and adults fear him. But behind the red nose and painted smile, Gacy was one of America's most terrifying serial killers. And the movies? They barely scratched the surface of what he really did. Gacy wasn't just any criminal. He was a respected contractor, a community organizer, a man who threw neighborhood parties, had photos taken with political figures, and yes, dressed as a clown called Pogo to entertain children at birthday parties and hospitals. He called himself Pogo the Clown. He developed the character himself, performed at charitable events, and by all accounts, the children loved him. So did the community, which is exactly how he got away with it for so long. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy lured at least 33 young men and boys to his home in Norwood Park, Chicago. He would trick them, restrain them, assault them, and kill them. After his arrest, Gacy reportedly said, "Clowns can get away with murder. Now." You've heard of Pennywise, Stephen King's shape-shifting, child-hunting nightmare clown from the 1986 novel it later adapted into the 1990 miniseries with Tim Curry, then the blockbuster 2017 film with Bill Skarsgård. King has never explicitly confirmed that Gacy was the inspiration for Pennywise. He has said his own fear of clowns and the figure of Ronald McDonald influenced the character's appearance. While Gacy was arrested in December 21, 1978, 8 years before King wrote it, whether Gacy was a conscious influence remains unknown. But the matches are impossible to ignore. A clown who targets children, a community that doesn't see what's in front of them, a monster hiding behind face paint and a friendly smile. The stranger danger panic of the 1980s, powered in no small part by the Gacy case, spread through the cultural atmosphere in which King was writing. Did Gacy inspire Pennywise? King says no. But ask yourself, do you think the world's most famous killer clown being caught just 8 years before the world's most famous fictional killer clown is purely coincidental? American Horror Story referenced Gacy twice, first through a clown character named Twisty in Freak Show, clearly inspired by Gacy's character, and then by portraying Gacy himself in Hotel, with John Carroll Lynch playing the character in full clown makeup. Gacy was executed by lethal injection in May 1994. His last meal was fried chicken, shrimp, and strawberries. His last words remain disputed to this day. Some accounts say, "Kiss my ass." Others say he spoke about the state murdering him. Either way, not exactly remorseful.